The courtroom smelled like old wood and older grudges, but nothing stank worse than the judge's smirk. 23-year-old Jamal Carter stood at the defendant's table, his cheap suit itching, wondering if justice was just a word white folks threw around to feel noble. He wasn't supposed to be here. A year ago, Jamal was a community college student with dreams of becoming an engineer, fixing cars on weekends to pay rent. Now, he faced felony charges for assaulting an officer, a trumped-up claim from a traffic stop gone wrong. The cops said Jamal lunged. Jamal said he reached for his ID. The truth didn't seem to matter when the officer's word carried more weight than a black kid from the south side of Richmond. The judge, Eleanor Hargrove, was a local legend, known for her iron gavel and sharper tongue. At 62, she'd spent 3 decades on the bench, her pale blue eyes slicing through defendants like a blade. Her reputation for tough justice was code for something uglier. Whispers of bias had trailed her for years, though no one dared say it aloud. Not in her courtroom. Not until today. Jamal's public defender, Sarah Nguyen, was a wiry woman with a fire in her gut and 5 years of experience fighting losing battles. She'd warned him, "Keep your head down. Hargrove doesn't like defiance." But Jamal wasn't built for bowing. Not after a lifetime of being profiled, followed in stores, or told he looked suspicious for existing. The trial's 3rd day was unraveling. The prosecutor, a slick man named Richard Platt, had spent hours painting Jamal as a thug, twisting his every word. Platt's closing argument was a masterclass in dog whistles. This defendant has a history of disrespect for authority. He's a danger to our community. The jury, mostly white, middle-aged, shifted uncomfortably, their faces unreadable. Jamal's turn came. Against Sarah's advice, he'd insisted on speaking. He stood, shoulders squared, and faced the jury. "I'm not what they say. I'm a student, a son, a man who loves his mama and his little sister. I didn't attack nobody. I was scared, trying to do what the officer asked. You gotta believe, ma'am, not the criminal here." The room went silent. Then, from the bench, a sound cut through. Laughter. Judge Hargrove's lips curled, her chuckle sharp and deliberate. "Oh, Mr. Carter," she said, voice dripping with condescension. "That's quite the performance. But this isn't a stage for your theatrics." She leaned forward, her eyes glinting. "You expect us to believe you're just some innocent boy? Save it for the movies." The courtroom gasped. Sarah shot to her feet. "Objection, Your Honor. That's prejudicial and inappropriate." Jamal's heart pounded, his nails digging into his palms. The jury exchanged glances, some visibly stunned. Hargrove waved a hand dismissively. "Sit down, Ms. Nguyen. I'm entitled to my opinion." But Jamal couldn't sit. "Not now." "You Logan at me?" he said, voice low but steady. "You don't know me. You ain't never lived what I lived. You sit there judgin', but you don't see me." Hargrove's face hardened. "You will address me with respect, young man, or I'll hold you in contempt." "Respect." Jamal's voice rose, raw and unfiltered. "Where's my respect? You've been looking at me like I'm guilty since I walked in. You don't care about the truth, you just see my skin." The room erupted. Jurors whispered. Spectators shifted. Sarah grabbed Jamal's arm, hissing, "Stop now." But Hargrove's gavel slammed like thunder. "Enough. Mr. Carter, you're in contempt. Bailiff, remove him." The bailiff, a burly man named Tom, hesitated. He'd known Jamal's family for years, coached his cousin in Little League. Tom's eyes flicked to Hargrove, then back to Jamal, torn. "Your Honor, maybe we can—" "I said remove him," Hargrove snapped. Her face was flushed, her composure cracking. She pointed at Jamal like he was a stain on her courtroom. This is what happens when you let people like him think they can speak out of turn. The words landed like a slap. People like him. The jury froze. Sarah's jaw dropped. Even Platt, the prosecutor, looked uneasy, his pen stalling mid-note. The courtroom felt like a powder keg, one spark from explosion. Then, from the back, a voice broke the silence. "Your Honor, you're out of line." It was Clara Evans, a retired attorney in her 70s, observing the trial for a local watchdog group. She stood, her voice calm but firm. "Your bias is showing, and it's a disgrace to this court." Hargrove's eyes widened. "You will not lecture me in my own courtroom." "Bailiff, escort her out too." Tom didn't move. Instead, he crossed his arms, his face unreadable. "With respect, Judge, I think you need to step back. You're making this personal." The room held its breath. A judge being challenged openly, publicly was unheard of. Hargrove's gavel trembled in her hand. "You're all in contempt," she shouted, her voice shrill. "This is my court." Sarah seized the moment. "Your Honor, I move for a mistrial. Your conduct has prejudiced this entire proceeding. You've insulted my client, mocked his testimony, and shown clear racial bias. I'm filing a formal complaint with the Judicial Conduct Board." The jury murmured. Platt, sensing the case slipping, stood. "Your Honor, perhaps we should recess." "No recess," Hargrove barked. "I will not be undermined by this circus." She pointed at Jamal again. "You think you can play the victim? I've seen 100 like you, always an excuse, always a story." Jamal met her gaze, unflinching. "And I've seen 100 like you, thinking you're better 'cause you got power. But you ain't justice. You're just a bully with a robe." The courtroom exploded, gasps, shouts, the gavel pounding uselessly. Clara Evans stepped forward, pulling out her phone. "I'm recording this, Judge. The public deserves to hear it." Spectators began filming too, their phones raised like weapons. Hargrove's face went pale. She opened her mouth, but no words came. For the first time, she looked small, her authority crumbling under the weight of her own words. The bailiff finally moved not toward Jamal, but toward the bench. "Judge, I'm Callan, the supervising judge. This ain't right." Minutes later, the supervising judge, a stern woman named Linda Torres, entered. She'd been down the hall, alerted by a clerk who'd heard the chaos. Torres listened as Sarah recounted Hargrove's outburst, backed by Clara's testimony and the bailiff's reluctant nod. Jamal stood silently, his heart still racing, unsure if this was victory or another trap. Torres turned to Hargrove. "Judge Hargrove, your conduct has compromised this trial. You're recused, effective immediately. I'm declaring a mistrial, and I'll be recommending a formal review of your actions." She paused, her voice cold. "You're also in contempt for abusing your authority. Step down." The room was silent, the air thick with shock. Hargrove sat frozen, her gavel limp in her hand. For a moment, she looked like she might argue. Then, slowly, she rose and left the bench, her footsteps echoing in the stunned courtroom. Jamal exhaled, his knees weak. Sarah squeezed his shoulder. "You did it," she whispered. "You stood up, and they saw her for what she is." But Jamal wasn't celebrating. Not yet. A mistrial meant freedom for now, but the charges still hung over him. The system wasn't done with him, and he knew it. He looked at the jury, at Clara, at Tom. For the first time, he felt seen not as a stereotype, but as a man fighting for his life. As the courtroom cleared, Clara approached him. "You're brave, son. This isn't over, but you've started something. People will hear about this." Jamal nodded, his throat tight. "I just wanted to tell my truth." Outside, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the courthouse steps. Jamal's mother, Diane, waited, her face etched with worry. When she saw him, she ran, pulling him into a hug. "I'm so proud," she said, tears falling. "You didn't let her break you." Jamal hugged her back, but his eyes were on the horizon. Hargrove's fall was a win, but it wasn't justice not yet. The real fight was just beginning. He thought of his sister, his friends, all the kids growing up in a world that judged them before they could speak. For them, he'd keep fighting. The next day, Clara's video hit the internet. By evening, it had 1 million views. Hashtags like Justice for Jamal and End Bias trended. Local news ran the story, then national outlets picked it up. Hargrove's name became synonymous with scandal, her career teetering. But for Jamal, it wasn't about her downfall. It was about proving he was more than their assumptions. Arrogant judge laughs at young black man minutes later. She's held in contempt herself. The fallout from Judge Hargrove's meltdown spread like wildfire. By morning, the courthouse steps were a circus protesters with signs reading, "No justice, no peace," clashed with counter-demonstrators shouting about law and order. News vans lined the street, reporters thrusting microphones at anyone who'd talk. Jamal Carter, still reeling from the mistrial, stayed inside his mother's small apartment, the TV blaring updates about his case. Every channel had an opinion, but few had the truth. Diane, his mother, turned off the set. "Don't let them turn you into a spectacle, baby," she said, her voice firm but tired. At 45, she'd worked double shifts as a nurse for years, her hands calloused from labor and worry. "You told your story. Now you gotta live it." Jamal nodded, but the weight of the past week pressed on him. The viral video of Hargrove's outburst had made him a symbol. Some called him a hero, others a troublemaker. His phone buzzed with messages. Support from strangers, threats from others. He muted it, staring at the cracked screen. "Mama, what if this don't change nothing? What if they just put me back in front of another judge like her?" Diane sat beside him, her eyes fierce. "Then you fight again. You showed them you're not invisible. That's something." Across town, Sarah Gwynn was burning the midnight oil in her cramped office, drafting motions for Jamal's retrial. She'd taken his case pro bono, despite her boss's warnings about career suicide. Sarah didn't care. She'd grown up in a Vietnamese immigrant family, her parents scrubbing floors to send her to law school. She knew what it felt like to be dismissed, to be seen as less. Jamal's fire in the courtroom had lit something in her too. She called Clara Evans, the retired attorney whose video had sparked the uproar. "Clara, we've got a shot at getting the charges dropped," Sarah said, her voice urgent. "The public pressure's mounting, and the DA's office is sweating. But we need more witnesses, evidence, anything to counter that cop's story." Clara, sipping tea in her cozy Richmond home, smiled grimly. "I've got contacts in the community, people who've seen that Officer Daniels pull this before. I'll make some calls." Officer Greg Daniels, the man who'd arrested Jamal, was a 15-year veteran with a file full of complaints, none of which had stuck. He'd claimed Jamal lunged during a routine traffic stop, citing a broken taillight. The body cam footage was grainy, conveniently missing key moments. Daniels' report painted Jamal as aggressive, but neighbors who'd witnessed the stop told a different story. Daniels had been hostile from the start, taunting Jamal about his kind and demanding compliance. Sarah knew those neighbors were scared to testify, but Clara's network might change that. Meanwhile, Judge Hargrove wasn't going quietly. Holed up in her upscale home, she fired off emails to colleagues, claiming she was misunderstood and targeted by activists. She hired a PR firm to spin the narrative, painting herself as a victim of cancel culture. But the Judicial Conduct Board wasn't swayed. Her hearing was set for next month, and whispers of suspension or worse circulated. Hargrove's allies in the legal world were distancing themselves, but she clung to her version of events. Jamal was a disruptive element, and she'd done her duty. Back at the community college, Jamal's classmates rallied. His friend Marcus, a wiry kid with a knack for coding, organized a campus protest. "Man, you stood up to that judge," Marcus told him over cheap coffee at a diner. "That's bigger than you know. Kids like us don't get heard. You majing leasing." Jamal stirred his coffee, unconvinced. "They listened 'cause it went viral. What about the ones who don't get a video?" Marcus leaned forward. "That's why we keep pushing. You're not just fighting for you. It's for all of us." The retrial loomed, scheduled in 6 weeks with a new judge, Patricia Coleman, known for fairness but no pushover. Sarah prepped Jamal relentlessly, drilling him on testimony, warning him to stay calm. "They'll try to bait you again," she said. "Don't give them the satisfaction." But calm wasn't easy. The DA's office, under pressure to save face, doubled down. They added a charge of resisting arrest, claiming Jamal's attitude during the stop justified it. Sarah called it retaliation. Jamal called it bullshit. The truth was, the system was flexing its muscle, reminding him who held the power. Clara's network came through. 2 witnesses, a bodega owner named Luis and a teacher named Aisha, agreed to testify. They'd seen Daniels harass others in the neighborhood, targeting young Black and Latino men. Luis had grainy security footage showing Daniels yelling at Jamal before the alleged lunge. Aisha had overheard Daniels use a racial slur, though she'd been too scared to report it until now. Their statements could tip the scales, but testifying meant risking their own safety. Daniels had friends on the force, and retaliation wasn't just a word around here. The night before the retrial, Jamal couldn't sleep. He sat on his bed, staring at a photo of his sister, Kayla, grinning in her high school cap and gown. She was 16, smart as hell, and looked up to him. He'd promised her a better life, one where she wouldn't have to navigate the same traps he did. That promise kept him going. The retrial began in a packed courtroom, the air electric with tension. Judge Coleman, a Black woman in her 50s, commanded respect with a glance. Unlike Hargrove, she listened, her face unreadable but attentive. The prosecution stuck to their script. Jamal was a threat, a kid with a chip on his shoulder. Platt, the prosecutor, leaned hard on Daniel's testimony, painting him as a hero protecting the community. Sarah countered with precision. She played Luis footage showing Daniel's aggression. She called Aisha, who recounted the slur with quiet strength, her voice shaking but resolute. The jury, more diverse this time, thanks to Sarah's pretrial motions, listened intently. Jamal watched their faces, searching for hope. When it was his turn, he took the stand, heart pounding. He told his story. The stop, the fear, the way Daniel's hand hovered near his gun. "I wasn't trying to fight," Jamal said, his voice steady. "I was trying to live." The courtroom was silent. Even Platt seemed rattled. Coleman's eyes softened for a moment, but she quickly resumed her neutral mask. The defense rested, and the jury deliberated for 2 days. Jamal spent them at home, helping Kayla with her math homework, trying to act normal. Diane prayed nonstop, her Bible worn from use. Sarah called with updates, her voice cautiously optimistic. "We've got a shot, Jamal. You were believable. The evidence was solid." When the verdict came, the courtroom felt smaller, the air too thick to breathe. Jamal stood beside Sarah, his hands clammy. Diane clutched Kayla's hand in the gallery. Judge Coleman read the decision. "Not guilty on all charges." The room erupted, cheers from supporters, grumbles from others. Diane sobbed, pulling Jamal into a hug. Kayla grinned, punching his arm. Told you, big bro. Sarah exhaled, her shoulders slumping with relief. Clara, in the back, nodded approvingly. But the victory was bittersweet. Jamal knew the system hadn't changed overnight. Daniels was still on the force, his record untouched. Hargrove's hearing was pending, but she'd likely retire with a pension. The Real win was survival and the chance to keep fighting. Outside, reporters swarmed. Jamal gave a short statement, his voice raw. This ain't just about me. It's about every kid who gets judged before they get a chance. We gotta keep speaking up. The story didn't end there. Marcus turned the protest into a movement, organizing voter drives to elect better judges. Clara's watchdog group pushed for police reform, using Jamal's case as a rallying cry. Sarah took on more clients like him, building a reputation as a fighter. And Jamal? He went back to school, majoring in engineering, but he also spoke at community events, sharing his story. Kayla watched, proud, dreaming of becoming a lawyer. Months later, Hargrove's hearing ended with a suspension, 6 months. No pay. It wasn't enough, but it was a start. The viral video kept circulating, a reminder of what happens when power goes unchecked. Jamal's name became a symbol, not just of resistance, but of hope. As he walked across campus one crisp morning, a classmate stopped him. "Yo, Jamal, you're famous now. How's it feel?" He shrugged, a small smile breaking through. "Feels like I'm still me, just louder." The fight for justice hadn't ended, but Jamal had learned something. Truth, when spoken, could shake even the strongest walls. He'd keep speaking, for himself, for Kayla, for everyone who'd been silenced. And maybe, just maybe, the world would listen. What do you think? Where does justice begin? And who decides what's right? Share your thoughts, because this story isn't just Jamal Sit's ours.